and welcome to another Smaulgld live stream. It is Wednesday, the 6th of March, 2019, and tonight's topic: Venezuelan government sets up Bitcoin Litecoin remittance service. Perhaps this is the Bitcoin-backed boulevard. How's that for a B-alliterative term? Instead of gold-backed yuan, you have Bitcoin-backed boulevard. We're going to talk about that a little later in the program. First, we're going to take a look at some of the news and take a look at the gold and silver prices, the crypto prices. So let's get started on that right now. The equity markets today were down a bit, down a little bit. They were down $133. I always say dollars when I do the Dow. 133 points. We're down about 0.5% today. Now we're under 26,000. We're at 25,673. The NASDAQ down nearly a full point today, down to 7505, but still above 7,500. And the S&P 500 down 0.65%, or down 18 points to 2771. Gold and silver stopped falling today, but they didn't go up. Gold was down pretty much less than $1, down to 1286.90. It's currently at 1287, but it has fallen below that psychological 1300 mark, which it had held for quite some time. Silver, on the other hand, has fallen below the $16 mark, which it did attain earlier in the year, and is actually struggling to hold on to the $15 handle. It was down a nickel today, but that's a big deal. 5 cents on a $15 price is 0.34% down. Currently closed at 1506. Excuse me, and it is currently at 1506. And what does that do to the unsustainable gold-silver ratio? I hope people who've been listening to this long enough realize the fantasy of the 16-to-1 and the 15-to-1, because those ratios were based on government set bimetallic standards, not based on market realities, or they were based on the reality that both were used and sanctioned by government as medium of exchange or money. Currently, neither are used as money by governments, and they serve different purposes. They have different demand profiles, different uses for jewelry, industry, and so on. And that's why you don't just get this relative rarity nonsense argument that they should be 16-to-1 or 15-to-1. But they've been pumping that idea for at least 10, 15 years. And they'll continue to pump it. And it'll never get to 16-to-1 unless there's some dramatic increase in industrial demand for silver, or somehow a return to a bimetallic standard and the government sets the ratio at 16-to-1. But otherwise, you will hear the same type of pumping. They may stop talking about it for a while and tell you about a gold-backed yuan, or COMEX default, or JP Morgan is buying silver, whatever the pumper story of the day happens to be. But the gold-silver ratio one being unsustainable, that's one that's been, they trot that one out all the time. Silver shortage is another one as well. All right, let's move on now. Let's see if there's any other gold stories today. Yeah, just a point here in Market Watch. Yeah, gold edged higher. Looks to end longest string of declines in 2 years. It's strange. You know, we had been on a pretty decent run up since November last year. And then the last few weeks, it's kind of fallen apart for gold and silver. Let's move over to the cryptocurrencies. Take a look at what's going on there. Big star of the day today in cryptos was Litecoin, up to $55.43. That's up another 5 points. Remember, just a couple of months ago, Litecoin was down around $22. Bitcoin holding steady at $38.65. Ethereum at $138. That's down about 1%. And Bcash is down about 1% to $131.30. So very interesting how Litecoin is leading the pack, and has been leading the pack, not just on this run up the last couple of days, but a couple of weeks ago it did the same thing. So it's interesting that Litecoin is not moving with the crypto market, but is leading the crypto market higher. Now we Some of that might have to do with this Venezuelan story, but I don't think that's the complete part of it, because we saw a previous run-up in Litecoin without this Venezuelan news that we're going to talk about later in the program. Bitcoin price, they're talking about Bitcoin eyes $4,000 after erasing Monday's price losses. That's true, but it still hasn't made a significant move higher. Litecoin, on the other hand, has, and that's what these headlines are telling us, is that Litecoin is rocketing, boosting Bitcoin and Ethereum. Now, it shouldn't be that way, because Litecoin is the smaller market capped coin. It's only got a market cap of about $3 billion. Litecoin is significantly higher on $70 billion. Ethereum is also significantly higher, about 12-13 billion. And others are moving up, but not at the same pace that Litecoin is. Could be it's a smaller coin, but there's got to be something else going on that we're not fully aware of. I think I mentioned the other night it might have something to do with Backed. Go back and listen to last night's program. I'm not going to go through that theory again. Maybe it doesn't, but there's something out there where there's accumulation of Litecoin and heavy trading on it. And remember, these aren't stocks, so it's not like there could be inside information about something, but it's not the same thing as a stock that's actually going to influence the performance of Litecoin, because there is no Litecoin corporation that controls, and there's no earnings. Other crypto stories today, well, here's one on EOS, is actually the coin that's also doing well. That went up 13% along with Litecoin. They're both trading about the 4th and 5th place amongst the top crypto coins, which are Bitcoin in this order, then Ethereum, then XRP, and then either EOS, and then Litecoin, and then you got Bcash following up there. Other stories, Caribbean blockchain. Eastern Caribbean Central Bank takes steps towards digital currency. We're seeing this in some of these small countries wanting to have their own cryptos. The Fed has looked at it, but as part of a faster payments program. Russia supposedly looked at it. A lot of countries have looked at it. Sweden's looked at it. The problem with a cryptocurrency on a centralized blockchain is you put your entire money supply at risk. Sweden actually made a very good point. You put it on the blockchain, and let's say in the central bank, and they get invaded by Russia, then Russia controls all their money, and there's no money to resist. So I'm not sure we're going to see centralized blockchain central bank currencies. You might see the smaller ones use it, but I doubt the big ones will ever really adopt it. Now, Lightning Network, we've talked about that before. So it's really growing, and here's Litecoin Foundation or pointing out that the Litecoin Lightning Network now exceeds 1,000 channels. That sounds like a lot, but it really isn't. Let me show you what that means in context. The Lightning Network is an off-chain second layer off the Bitcoin or Litecoin, and you transact on that layer, and then you record the transactions after the fact onto the blockchain, and this speeds up the transactions, hence it's called Lightning. Now you can see Bitcoin has 7,000 nodes and 32,000 channels, so it's 32 times the size of Litecoin in terms of channels, and it can carry 752 Bitcoin, which currently is about $2.5 to $3 million, whereas Litecoin, you can only run about 142 Litecoin through it. Now, the reason that Litecoin doesn't have the same lightning reach is it doesn't need it right now. First of all, it already has about 10 times fewer transactions. Bitcoin's running about 10,000 transactions every 24 hours. Litecoin about 1,000. Litecoin's already faster than Bitcoin, and it's not clogged up because it has 10 times fewer transactions. So currently, the need for Litecoin is not, for Lightning Network on Litecoin is not there. Eventually, if it does grow out, it will need the Lightning Network probably as well. Probably doesn't want to do the Bcash, just make bigger blocks. And if that's the case, then Litecoin Network for Lightning will increase. But currently it's grown, but it's really nothing to speak about. But the Bitcoin one is, and people are speaking about that, none other than your friend Jack Dorsey, the guy who runs Twitter, and also Square/Cash, the apps, the payment apps. And he says, I'm excited about helping Bitcoin to be fast and efficient currency, and excited by Elizabeth, that's the woman above, Elizabeth Stark, his new buddy. They both received the Lightning Torch a while back, and helping the Lightning Labs team, and there's a little love fest going on there. Thanks, Jack. We're lucky to have you as an investor friend and fan of Bitcoin. All right. Now, what else happened in the world today? There's a lot of politics. I'm not going to get into Pelosi and stuff there, but nothing too significant. But what is significant was this comment, I thought, by John Williams, not the composer, but the San Francisco Fed president. Fed Williams says today, in a downturn, we could consider quantitative easing and negative rates. Well, that's interesting, because they're all starting to talk about what happens when the economy goes down. Now, this isn't really, a lot of people read into this. Janet Yellen was talking about, before she left, what the Fed could possibly do if the economy went into a tailspin, and she talked about having other tools in addition to, she started talking about what they could do. I don't feel like doing her impression today. It makes me depressed. She said that, actually not depressed, it just doesn't make me feel good. It's a nauseating sound. And then if we could look at what the committee all spoke about, the monetary policy, she was saying that it might be possible that the Fed might consider looking into buying equities. Now, they can't do that under their mandate currently, but I would imagine if the stock market and the economy crash, because they're kind of tied together, and they went to Congress and they said, listen, we know how to revive the economy, we'll just buy $4 trillion worth of these depressed equity shares and drive the price back up. I'm sure 60% of the Congress would vote for that in a heartbeat, but they don't yet have that power. They have the power, however, to set interest rates and to do quantitative easing, but I've never heard any of the Fed members talk about negative interest rates. I always thought that was something they would shy away from, because negative interest rates are not becoming of a reserve currency, although the ECB was down at 0, and their banks hold the Bank of Japan debt and it's negative. So I guess if they all have, it's not unusual to be negative, but not sure that's a smart idea. But Fed Williams talking about it today would consider, didn't say they would do it, but I hadn't heard any other Fed president talk about doing negative interest rates. Just seems a bit not what the Fed should, well, they shouldn't be doing QE either, so who could be surprised? All right, let's move on now to the Bitcoin-backed boulevard and this story about Venezuela. Now, I've got the site that shows what Venezuela is doing. I got to convert it into English. But what happened the other day, they launched a platform, which is quite interesting that Venezuela would do. This is the government. Venezuela new payment platform accepts Bitcoin and Litecoin. Envío de remesas y criptomonedas de Venezuela a través de la plataforma Patria. Basically, they're saying that they've set up this platform for cryptocurrencies, crypto monies, monedas, and it's government run. Now, it's not unusual in countries that are experiencing currency collapses, economics collapses, to pursue means other than their government currency. The definition of a currency collapse is your currency in your own country doesn't work. And when you have inflation running in the thousands of percent, by the time you get to the store, you've lost half your money off in many instances, if there's even anything there to buy. So Venezuela is definitely in a very precarious situation, not just economically, but politically now, with Maduro trying to hold on, and most of the world trying to support his ouster. And even in the United States, the Republicans and the Democrats are looking to do that. But, so we do see, if you live in a country that's experiencing hyperinflation, economic collapse, currency collapse, you try to either get rid of your currency as fast as you can, but even sometimes that's not possible. Or generally what happens is you use alternative currencies. In many instances, so for example in Argentina, when they had their, and they still have issues, you would use dollars. Dollars would be stable, and instead of using Argentine Australs or pesos, you would use the dollar. Other places you might get by if they accept silver. You might store your gold or use your gold to get out of a country and transfer your wealth across country lines and get somewhere else. Get out of the country, because even if you could get the currency that you need to spend in that country, there's nothing to buy, and you've basically had it in that country you want to get out. So there's been many instances in history where you've had countries melt down. Hungary, Argentina, Turkey. When I say countries, I mean their monetary systems or their currencies. And Venezuela is currently going through that. And of course the people have to figure out what they're going to do. How are they going to transact? So it's not unusual to hear these stories that people are using silver, that people are mining Bitcoin, mining Litecoin. They're lucky because basically the electricity there is free, pretty much, so they can do that. And that's no surprise that that individuals in a country would resort to something other than the flawed currency of the country of issuance. But here's what's interesting, is that this platform is set up by the government. Now think about that. This is why it's significant. It's not significant that people are doing whatever they can in Venezuela to figure out how to transact, how to stay alive, do what they have to do, and if Bitcoin or Litecoin are part of that, makes sense. But generally, when you have that, countries will try to discourage the use of other currencies because they're trying to prop up their own. They don't want people using the dollar in their country if they're opposed, especially in Venezuela. Now, the issue with Venezuela is people can't get dollars into the country because of sanctions. They'll cut them off the SWIFT system. I doubt you can use PayPal to send money into Venezuela. Western Union, a lot of like Mexicans in the United States, they may work or live in the United States either permanently or temporarily, and they, through a process of remission, they will remit their wages back to Mexico. Makes sense. They're eventually going to go back there, or they're supporting a family or a loved one, whatever it is. They'll send the money back. And generally, they've been using money transmitter services like Western Union. They'll put their cash down or wherever they pay, and the money will be wired back. And there is no issue with sending money into Mexico. There may be issues economically, whether it's good to have migrants come to the country, earn their money, and then send it back, and then the value of that labor as represented by the currency they're given isn't spent in the United States. But that's a different issue. The idea is you can do it. You can send them the money back. Well, you really can't get money into Venezuela very easily. You're not going to be able to get dollars, and it's hard to get gold and silver into a country. Now, what they are doing, we've seen in Venezuela, you'll find people trying to find abandoned gold mines. They'll try to do some panning. They'll try to find silver or gold in the country, but that's not much of a guaranteed proposition. Or you can try smuggling, but when you smuggle, you risk a penalty of a government trying to stop you and arrest you and so on. But a lot of people have done is they have been trading on a thing called local Bitcoins, and that is run, there it is. Local Bitcoins is a peer-to-peer. It's got nothing to do with the government. You basically say, I want to buy, someone says they want to sell, and you make your transaction there. You get your Bolivar, you get your Bitcoin, whether you're buying or selling. And there was a guy named Carlos Hernandez. We covered this about 11 days ago. He wrote an op-ed in the New York Times saying how Bitcoin saved his family because they were trading in this fashion, and he would trade small amounts of Bitcoin. I don't just mean small amounts in Satoshis. I mean even in just dollar amounts or Bolivar amounts, because if he knew he was going to go buy something for $10, $15, that's about how much he'd take out, and then he'd go and he'd spend it all as soon as he got his conversion into Bolivar. And this is not surprising that people figure out how to transact when the government-issued currency doesn't function, and they can't get another government-issued currency that may be more stable, like the dollar or the euro. Or they just can't get it because their country is a pariah in the international community. So the people have been, as we mentioned, if they've had silver. The problem with the silver is once you run out of your silver, then there's no more coming in, and it's hard to get it in. And so unless they sanction mining, and they're not doing that. So what people are doing is they're mining Bitcoin and Litecoin, and they're trading it amongst themselves. And you can also bring Bitcoin or Litecoin in through services like this, because it's not part of a system. Remember, one of the things we talked about, one of the advantages of paying with Bitcoin is that you can't get kicked off the system. So let's say I'm on this channel and I start saying the most offensive things towards whoever is running MasterCard, or whoever is running Patreon, who's ever running PayPal, and I violate every last thing. They can take my bank account away. They can prohibit you from sending me money on Patreon. They can prohibit you sending me money through PayPal. They're a company. They can control it. And the United States has sanctions, and it's very hard to get money into Venezuela. But one of the things that they can't do is they can't stop you from sending me Bitcoin or Litecoin. Bitcoin and Litecoin company, there is none that can step in and say, yes, we think it's in the best interest for this, for the Bitcoin and Litecoin ecosystem not to allow any payments to Lewis over at Smaulgld. They can't do that. So you're free to go on and send it to whomever you want, and I'm free to take it from whomever I want. And that seems to be what's happening in Venezuela. Now, what's interesting about this, though, and you can see how this Carlos Hernandez, I'll put this tomorrow in the notes, and you can read it. It was in the New York Times editorial, how he managed, what was good about it, and how he managed to save his country, get his brother out of the country, and so on. But what Venezuela is doing, the government of Venezuela, this is what the amazing part is. You can understand very easily what, as I mentioned, what the citizens are doing. The government has actually realized, look, we know that the Bolivar isn't cutting it. And we know that people would send money into the country in the form of dollars, but that's not cutting it either. So they're actually setting up, and this is an interesting concept. Remember, we just talked about local Bitcoins. That is a decentralized peer-to-peer exchange. There's no real central authority. The whole thing about Bitcoin, like you can send it, you can receive it, back and forth. You don't have to worry about a third party. Well, here the government comes in and interposes itself and says, well, we'll act as the payment processor. And we'll figure, this is exactly what I think is happening with a lot of the whole idea of Bitcoin and Litecoin. Banks are trying to do this. Payment processors are trying to do this. And this is my point, that a large portion of Bitcoin and Litecoin will come under the tracking and tracing and the centralization of governments, even though you can still trade your Bitcoin and Litecoin outside of these types of facilities. Many people will. They'll trade on centralized platforms, and eventually that's what Fidelity wants to do. ErisX, Hiji, Ameritrade, back. That's their idea, to trade this stuff on a centralized platform and have a centralized entity even hold and store it for you. It goes against the concept, but because it's an asset, that's how third-party middlemen, aggregators think, governments and so on. Well, so what Venezuela has set up here is Remittance to Venezuela. Remesas is a service of the Patria platform that allows you to send remittances to Venezuela in cryptocurrencies. The resources sent will be available in sovereign bolivars in the Monedero Patria as soon as the transfer is confirmed. So the government itself is actually setting itself up as an intermediary to get Bitcoin and Litecoin into the country. Look at the top there. They have the Bitcoin rate on the left, and on the right they have the Litecoin rate. So you're seeing that the government is actually endorsing the sending of Bitcoin and Litecoin into the country, because that's a way of sending value into the country, which is very important. They need some value. They can't get it in other forms. They're not prohibited from getting it into the country via Bitcoin and Litecoin. There's no country that can tell them they can't. There's no place you can shut them off and say you can't have Bitcoin and Litecoin in your country. So they themselves are facilitating this process. Now, you would say, well, it's not necessary. People can trade through their own wallets. They can trade through local Bitcoins. Why is the government getting involved? Well, it's a good question. But remember, that's the same question. Why do you need Fidelity? Why do you need Coinbase? Why do you need all of these entities, Backed, ErisX, TD Ameritrade? Because there is a convenience factor. People are used to dealing with the middleman. But here you have the country of Venezuela setting up this site. And as we've seen, it's set up specifically for you to send Bitcoin or Litecoin into the country. Let me show you more how it works here. It explains what you do. This is easily transferable into English. The original is in Spanish. Access to the remittance systems using your email and your security code that will be sent in that way. Provide your personal information on the first access. To send the consignment successfully, you must perform the following steps. And they make it easy peasy here. You define the recipient of the remittance, the person in Venezuela that's going to get it. Define the current cryptocurrency amount. Select the cryptocurrency you want to use, Bitcoin or Litecoin. Make the transfer to the address, and then report the transfer hash code. Now, for doing this, what does Venezuela achieve? They can actually see the flow of capital into their country, if you can call this capital, because that's what it is. And they know who's getting it, which, again, defeats the purpose of cryptocurrencies and the anonymity, but they don't care. People need to live, and the government is actually helping them do this, and they make a commission. They can collect up to, I think, by law, 15%, but in this particular case, if you look to the left, they're going to collect a commission of 5.70%. Now, this is legal Bitcoin, legal Litecoin in Venezuela, and they make it very easy for you. They give you the two currencies, they give you the price, they tell you what they're going to charge, and they'll act as a payment processor. They're like BitPay. You know, they're now a payment processor. Now, they're doing this out of necessity, but what they are doing is they are legitimizing Bitcoin and Litecoin as transfers of value, as having the ability to transfer value. And we'll see how much gets sent in and how, but this is a very significant development, because it's not just the fact that the people were doing what they're doing. You can understand that. We mentioned that they're already doing that. It's been commented on before. But the real significance of this is it shows, by adopting this platform and actually sanctioning it, authorizing it, participating in it, running it, collecting the commission, doing all the background work, that not only will people in a failed state use Bitcoin and Litecoin, no surprise, but the state itself here is resorting to Bitcoin and Litecoin. So I think it's a very significant development. Now, a lot of people say, well, it's centralized. Why would people do it? It doesn't matter. The point is that the government encourages it. There's many people out there. You may call them sheeple. They're used to transacting through government-approved or large entities. That's why people trade stocks with Fidelity. They don't try to hide their transactions. They don't care. They're just used to, because, you know, you get a tax form at the end of the year and you file it based on the profits you made. A lot of the original crypto people, very libertarian, anarcho-capitalists, trying to do everything outside the purview. It's anonymous. You can't see it. There's no taxes, all that kind of stuff. But mainstream adoption, that's not a concept that is even in the mindsets of the average person. The average person is just thinking how they're going to get along, and they're not thinking about decentralized, centralized platforms. All they're thinking about is if they need value, they're used to the government telling them these pesetas, these bolivars are worth something. And once you realize you don't have to be told that they're not worth anything, you go to the store and they're not worth anything, but then they tell you you can use this Bitcoin and Litecoin if someone sends it to you. Then you use the Bitcoin and Litecoin. You don't start thinking, well, this is supposed to be a decentralized peer-to-peer. They don't think like that. They just want to get by. And that's really most people. You talk to a lot of people that are crypto heads, they'll give you an earful about freedom and ending central banks and change the world and decentralized. Most people don't even care about that. And if they're talking about mainstream adoption, it's only going to happen in part because you have these centralized banks, Silicon Valley, Wall Street, whatever it is, and even countries doing this type of thing. Sounds like it's a contradiction to what Bitcoin and Litecoin should be. Well, it is, but nothing has changed the actual tenor of Bitcoin and Litecoin. No one's stopping you from just using it as a peer-to-peer currency, but Venezuela has set it up now out of their own necessity. It's not only the people in their country realize that their money doesn't work, the government realizes it doesn't work, and they realize that Bitcoin and Litecoin work, so they're going to work with it. They're going to use it. They're going to take a fee. They're going to know who has it, and they can gain control over and not be sanctioned over the monies that come into their country. All right, so I want to see what you guys think about this. I think it's significant. Venezuela itself is a failed state, so it's not like it's an endorsement. They're doing this because, in a sense, it's what they have to do. However, many states are going to fail. We know that. That's just what happens. And this is a precedent, I believe, if it works, that if they can set this up, it looks like it's a decent-looking interface, that they were able to set this up and act as a payment processor for remittances into their own country using a currency that isn't theirs, but it doesn't belong to the United States. It doesn't belong to any country's currency, so they're not supporting, or they're basically using it as some might say, a global currency, because that's what it is. It can be used globally. All right. Let us see what you guys are saying in the comments. If you're saying anything, if you're still with us, let's see what we have here. Live chat. All right. We do have some comments. I had somebody comment. He wrote, or she, probably he, it doesn't matter. The thing was, he wrote, effing crypto shill, just on the headline. So there are some people that have said that because I cover cryptocurrencies, that somehow that is a betrayal or it's a sellout. You know, you have these people that are in love with assets like silver. You know, you get the people over in this that follow silver, and it's like a cult religion that, you know, you have to have your integrity and you have to believe in silver, even if it doesn't. The price doesn't matter. I mean, it's the cause. It's silver. I just don't think that way about silver, about Bitcoin, about Litecoin, about real estate, about gold. There's no such thing as for me, where I'm going to attach myself and fall in love with an asset and treat it as if it is a cause. And there are people, and the Bitcoin people are just as bad. They go on about the cause and decentralized, and I'm analyzing this as you know, if you don't analyze things objectively, you fall into and there's probably people out there, they're still clinging on to the idea that silver's set to skyrocket. You'll see gold silver ratio unsustainable. COMEX is going to default. Wait till JP Morgan and their X million ounces of silver. They did believe it because they want to believe it. Now they have to believe it. They refuse to even think differently, think about something else. And the same with the Bitcoin people. Change the world, global currency. I don't know. Anne is saying Litecoin's building a big green can. It is interesting to see. Phil McCain, I haven't seen Phil before. Phil says, un hombre que tiene 50 pesos colombianos in Venezuela es un rico. And then he translated it for us. If you have 50 Colombian pesos in Venezuela, you would be a rich man. Es la verdad. Flip the L in Litecoin, you get a 7. Isn't that lucky, says Pablo Pina de Chile. Don't forget about the Litecoin halving. Also a bullish event, says Greg K. Is a halving in May of this year? No, it's later. Seth Shepard is here. Long live Litecoin. Yeah, you see everybody. This is all about sentiment. There's really nothing in any of this has changed. The price goes up, and then all of a sudden people, they start to see the value in Litecoin or Bitcoin or whatever. And when the price goes down, they tell you why it's no good. Especially in cryptocurrencies, the price is the last thing to look at relative, not last thing, but it's one of the lowest things to look at relative to the health of the ecosystem. Look at hash rate, look at transactions, look at medium transaction values, look at number of active wallets. There's so many, and they don't even tell you the price, but they do tell you the health of the system. Look at things like payment processors by a country like Venezuela becoming a payment processor. Stuff like that. All right. Russia didn't have hyperinflation, but we did use alternative payment tools, says Fiona Whalen. Pablo Pina says, por ejemplo, vodka. Exactly, we called it the liquid currency, said Fiona. No joke, any liquor would do. Cigarettes too. That's right. Now, in those examples, you did not have a cigarette-backed ruble or a vodka-backed ruble. Government couldn't store all that. They weren't going to do it. But in this sense, you know, what's going to happen if Venezuela could be accumulating a lot of Bitcoin and Litecoin through this process of remittance? I mean, they could, I don't know what they're going to do with it. They're obviously going to convert it into Bolivar, but then they're holding the bag, so to speak. They're not going to be able to convert it into anything else. Maybe they might be able to sell some of it for gold, but they can't convert it into any major currency. So we could see Venezuela becoming a large hodler of Bitcoin and Litecoin. So Fiona Whalen is giving her experiences in Russia, the Soviet Union. We should have you on the show one day, and you can, if you're willing, and we can talk about that. All right. People have sent Bitcoin to Iran. Yeah, well, they had the lightning torch went to Iran. I think it's out again, but it did get there. Dash is big in Venezuela. Pablo Lewis, it is on your mugs. What? Is on my mugs. Ann says, I was just thinking that Luis Venezuela is going to have a bag of big... Oh, yeah. Yeah, they are going to. What will that mean? I don't know. They'll probably hold that and use that. Maybe they'll start settling their foreign debts in Bitcoin or Litecoin, if that's all they have. You know, look at the problem they have with gold. And this is my point about gold and silver. Gold and silver were the perfect money, even to the point of being... And one of them, not even... One of the best things about gold and silver is the fact that they were divisible, fungible, durable. And then they had great properties and they were desired. But the limitation on gold and silver, as we're seeing with Maduro's plight, is even though you can make gold and silver into little tiny bits and you can carry it around and it's easier to carry around than lead or copper, it's hard to get from point A to point B in large amounts. It really is. They're just, especially, not just, okay, so if you, Venezuela's gold is in England for whatever reason. I'm not going to get into that. Well, England can say we're not going to give it back to you. Okay. Well, that sucks. Then England says, well, we'll give it back to you. All right. Now you got to come and get it. Either you got to fly it or you got to run it across the ocean. Plane could crash, the boat could sink. These things happen all the time. There's lots of gold at the bottom of the ocean. You can get taken over by Somalian pirates. So gold to move in large amounts. I mean, that's when in the 60s when the French and the Germans and the Swiss used to come to the U.S. to collect their gold with their dollars under Bretton Woods. They used to bring the warships to come and get the gold. And that's assuming they're going to give it to you. Now, in Venezuela's case, England is not giving it to them. So for Venezuela to transact right now, their bolivar is useless. They owe a lot of money. The only thing they have of value is gold and oil. But if you got sanctions and embargoes, it's hard to get around that. And they're having trouble. I think he's trying to like get 9 tons of gold sold somewhere. It's hard to do. Bitcoin and Litecoin, the reason they are, I don't saying they're superior as assets or in price, just as a medium of exchange. If you don't see that, then I'm sorry, it's Moronica. Doesn't mean they're better. There's so many people that love gold and silver, they refuse to see that transacting in Bitcoin and Litecoin is infinitely better. Oh, but it's not a store of value. Oh, but you can't do anything with it. It doesn't matter. That's not the point. We only are looking at it as a medium of exchange. It is a superior medium of exchange. I don't care about putting silver on the block. Once you say, well, we'll put it on the blockchain, but then it's not silver anymore. It's just another digital currency. You're admitting the fact that silver is deficient or gold is deficient as a medium of exchange because you have to digitize it. But if it's something that's already digitized, then you don't even have to worry about it. And the problem with gold-backed or silver-backed digital currencies are there has to be a situs where the gold and silver sit. And the problem there is, like we saw with eGold, they can shut it down, they can capture the situs, they can steal the stuff there. So it's not that convenient. For whatever reason. Now, I find it almost impossible to understand why people would accept Bitcoin and Litecoin. I'm not going to get into that. The fact is that they do. And even though it's not, quote, backed, there's no pile of gold or silver sitting somewhere, people accept it. Well, if that's the case, and you know you can transfer it, then it clearly is superior as a medium of exchange. And that's why all you have to do is picture poor Maduro trying to get his 9 tons of gold from point A to point B and then to point C to sell it, what the problem is. Whereas with the Bitcoin and the Litecoin, as long as people value this stuff at $50, $3,000, whatever it is, then it is a superior medium of exchange. Doesn't make it better than gold. Doesn't make it better than silver. It doesn't even make it, in my mind, digital gold or digital silver. It's just the easiest thing to use without having to ask anyone, without having to go through PayPal, Patreon, Swift system, Bank of England. You just send it and you got it, and that's it. That is the most simplistic way of looking at it, and you really have to be in a sense of denial not to see that's how it works. You could say it's not worth anything, it's going to go to zero. Well, it currently isn't zero, and it currently isn't on its way there. It's heading higher. And if you need to transfer value right now, you can send it, and the other person will receive that value. No one's saying to hold on to it because it's going to go up or it's going to go down. The point is, it's valuable because it can transmit value at a point in time, which is now. And then it's not saying hold on to it and it's going to be valuable in the future. The point is, it currently can transmit value. And that is the undeniable advantage of Bitcoin and Litecoin. If you don't see it, then you're trying not to see it. You're trying to what if or what about. You're not paying attention. All right. Anything else? Imagine if it's success in other countries. That's right. Imagine if it's a success and other countries do what Venezuela's doing. Well, why wouldn't it be a success? The only thing that would make it not a success is that the values of Bitcoin and Litecoin cease to have any value. In other words, Litecoin goes to zero, Bitcoin goes to zero, then what's the point? We'll take all that you want. Well, no one's going to send it because they're not sending any value. So I would say, yes, it would be. All right. Well, thanks, Ann, Fiona, Robert, Pablo, and to we have a new person here today. Who was that? It was Mr. McCain. Is Mr. McCain? Yes, Phil McCain. Welcome. All right, everyone. Well, thank you very much for joining me tonight. And remember to join me each and every evening at this time, around this time, to go through cryptocurrencies, economics, gold, and silver. Also, if you're interested in buying precious metals, please consider doing so through the links below. ST Bullion is one of them. Smaulgld gets a small commission if you do buy your precious metals through the links below this BitChute and this YouTube, or on the Smaulgld website. And not investment advice to buy gold or silver, but if you're going to do so, please consider doing so through those links, and also check out the ways that you can help the site out, either by becoming a Smaulgld patron or donating one time via PayPal, or buying a Smaulgld or a few Smaulgld mugs, stack them up, or sending a check or silver to Smaulgld LLC, or donating via Bitcoin or Litecoin to the QR codes on the screen, or on the to the addresses on the Smaulgld site. Thank you very much indeed again, and we will see you mañana por la mañana, no, mañana por la noche. All right. Thank you very much, and we will see you tomorrow. Mañana por la noche. Hasta luego.